Now, good news for any MMA fans out there. Off The Brawl. In it, they're going to be speaking to Pat Healy, who's a former MMA fighter, and he has fought Khabib Nurmagomedov in his own career. Here he is talking about Khabib.
Pat, obviously you've been in there with Khabib Nurmagomedov. Just, can you give us a description of what it's like being in there? You went full 3 rounds back at UFC 165. Just tell us what it's like being in there with Khabib and how tough his grappling obviously is and his wrestling.
Yeah, it's real tough, obviously. A lot of people make a big deal about how strong he is. That's one question I get, like, oh, how strong is he? Well, it's not his strength that's overwhelming. It's his constant movement and his ability to kind of shut down what you're doing, especially on the ground. Like, when we grappled, I just couldn't do anything. Like, I couldn't move my hips. He really, like, isolated me down. And like I said, it wasn't from his strength. It was more from his positioning. And, you know, he's always in good position. And, you know, he is, like, very explosive and quick, too.
That is probably the best moustache you're going to see on Off The Brawl all week. That is Pat Healy speaking to Niall McGrath, who joins me in the studio. Off The Brawl is coming your way this evening from 10:30. Excited to have a new MMA podcast on our channels here. What can viewers expect?
Everything.
I do suspect it's going to be one theme and one theme only for the next week.
Yeah. Obviously, with the big fight coming up on Saturday week, it's the large focus is going to be on that.
It's interesting what he says there, isn't it, about the positioning rather than the power of Khabib, which is something that Conor McGregor needs to look out for on Saturday week.
Yeah, 100%. You know, Khabib's grappling is obviously his strength. His wrestling and his sambo skills, but that's something, you know, he's done in the past. Is he traps the arm. So obviously you've only one arm, so he'll start landing shots when he gets in top position. So it's a very, very dangerous situation. It's probably one of the key areas you need to look out for in this fight coming up on Saturday. But we've a big focus on that. Pat speaks, you know, quite broadly about his time with Khabib, and I know it was a long time ago, 2013 I believe it was, at UFC 165. But it's just interesting to see, because Pat's now actually a coach. He looks at fights a little bit differently since his time in the octagon, and seeing himself fight Khabib and the improvements Khabib has made, etc. We've also UFC lightweight Paul Felder. He's coming off a broken arm. He unbelievably came through a fight 3 rounds after breaking his arm straight through in the first round and fought on, and only lost a split decision victory against Mike Perry. And he's also UFC on Fox analyst, so he gives great insight into the McGregor fight as well, and also talks about when he's back in there, and a bit of a call out for a couple of fighters as well, so check that out. And obviously Duke Roufus as well. I think you played a clip yesterday morning. Duke's one of the top striking coaches in the world, and actually Paul's coach, coincidentally. So yeah, loads to look forward to on the show. But yeah, like, listen, the main focus is UFC 229 because of everything that's going on around it. And obviously this week there's been a few more little posts and jibes and things going on in social media, and different interviews that have come out, sort of stirring the pot in many ways.
Well, that's the thing. Since the dust has settled on the press conference, obviously we had Dana White saying it was one of the darkest press conferences he's seen, and I think none of us could disagree with that in terms of some of the content of it. But I think the reason for that, Niall, and this is just my take, is that there might actually be some real beef here, that this isn't some sort of... this isn't, you know, Conor McGregor getting in the head like he did with Jose Aldo for a competitive advantage. Of course, that is one of the reasons, but the way it turned so dark is because of a real held belief here that McGregor doesn't like Khabib really hates Conor McGregor.
Yeah, no, it's got personal to an extent where, you know, there's geopolitical slagging going on. Yeah. Almost sort of, you know, we're talking about religion nearly. Thankfully it hasn't gone, you know, any further than that at the moment. But, you know, as we said, Kadyrov has been mentioned. That really got underneath Khabib's skin when he, you know, basically said Khabib's father was a quivering coward when he met Kadyrov, obviously the Chechen dictator, you know, Dagestan, Chechen, they've hostile territories down there. So that was a real sort of moment, I think, that has, you know, I thought Khabib got a little bit unsettled by that. That's what Conor wants to do. Any sort of advantage psychologically going into this fight, they can unsettle him like we saw against Jose Aldo. But, you know, there's been threats this week on social media. Some of Kadyrov's fight team, Atmat MMA, down there in Chechnya, have come out on social media. Hussein Haladev, I think his name is, has come out and basically told Conor McGregor to apologise. So you know, it's
The slight was more at Nurmagomedov's
also-
father rather than at the Chechen dictator, no?
It is, but I think once you sort of make any slight on these guys, it's taken exceptionally personally, and I think you know, if we go far back as the Brooklyn incident, which sparked it all really off with Artem Lobov, when Khabib confronted Lobov, we've never really found out what has been said there. But the other thing I think is interesting, SBG, Conor's gym, has been very tight-lipped. A lot of the guys, you know, they've been very hard to get a hold of in the build-up to this fight. They're not really
They're probably just in
talking.
camp, no? They usually go to
No,
camp
but
like
there's
that,
so many fighters. You know, there's
Okay.
guys obviously based back in Dublin, guys over in Vegas like Peter Queally with Conor. I think Artem's here. Artem has his own fight coming up a week after Conor. They're not really saying a lot. I think Owen Roddy's the only one in the last number of weeks to come out and speak, and he's about my colleague Peter Carroll, who's actually joined us on the show tonight. And
Why is it? Why are people not talking?
I'm not sure. Maybe it's because they don't want any sort of other things happening outside of the octagon in terms of slagging matches. You know, anything that gets maybe a little bit more personal that's
Right.
going to unsettle.
That sounds pretty grim.
Yeah, it is. It's sort of something. As Dana said, you know, it's a bit dark at the moment. So hopefully, we can get it all resolved in the octagon on October 6th, and it doesn't really
Somehow I don't
boil
think
over.
what will happen in the octagon might resolve any geopolitical situations that might be going on.
Listen,
Sport is a
stranger
powerful
things
thing.
have
Sport is
happened,
a powerful
and
thing.
I think, you know, especially when you're dealing with a guy like Razman Kadyrov, who's literally an absolutely massive MMA fan. It's their number one national sport in the country, that and soccer. He's his own football team named after his father as well. So it is, you know, it's a crazy set of circumstances. And, you know, another interview I wanted to mention as well that Petesy actually did with Miles Price. He used to fight in SBG. He's over actually training with Khabib Nurmagomedov in AK Gym in San Jose.
Right.
It's just another sort of dimension to this fight that, you know, Miles is a guy who's fighting on the Irish scene here. He's actually signed for Bellator. He was one of the 38 that signed for Bellator Fighting Championships. They obviously signed a lot of guys from UK and Ireland. They're going to be sort of branching out and doing more shows here. There's a rumoured show for December, shall I say. But in terms of that, he pretty much, you know, says in the interview that he didn't like Conor McGregor from their time sparring in SBG, and he coincidentally went to Team Rhino, I think it was 2010, and he's over now training with Khabib. So it's very interesting. If you go to, you know, Khabib's Instagram and Miles' Instagram, you'll see the pictures of them training there. So a fascinating interview on this week's Eurobash, which I do with Petesy as well in MMA fighting.
Very intriguing. It's strange build-up, isn't it?
It is strange,
not like
but
anything we've seen.
It's darker,
Yeah.
and I think we even possibly saw that from Conor. A more emotional Conor than I think we've ever seen before. But listen, you know, in terms of numbers, this fight's going to do. You know, I'm getting excited now. I really am. I can feel the buzz now, and I think, you know, next week when we come into fight week, you start seeing, you know, the pre-fight interviews they're going to do from Las Vegas there. I think the country's going to get very, very excited if, you know, it isn't already.
Yeah, absolutely. Niall, thank you very much for that. Off the Brawl is live tonight from about 10:30 on all our social channels.